We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512.
I want to add, and I just want to get your retort to that because you've answered my last two as I brought that up. I guess the big punchline here, what I'm getting at, is ultimately when I was bringing up social constructs, I'm pretty sure all three of us agree that it's bad to lie, cheat, steal, murder, and all of. Obviously, I don't want to kick your door in, Jim. Hope you know that.
Right.
But,
No, that's fine.
Just using it, yeah. But I guess what I'm getting at here is if we're going to take an act and we're going to say it's wrong, all acts that I'm pretty sure we all agree are wrong, is that act wrong altogether? Or is it wrong because it's for our own sense of comfort, because that's what we agreed upon, you know? Whereas, is that your opinion, or is that more of, well, this will keep me safe, so we are going to deem it as wrong?
Well, it's complicated, because I think you're taking a very black and white approach to what is acceptable and what isn't. Like, even one of your examples there, telling a lie. I said this on Talk Heathen earlier today. There are times when I think lying would be more beneficial. If you were lying to somebody to protect somebody else, that might be considered good for most people. So I don't know if we can even say universally all of these acts are bad all of the time. Some of them are more likely to be seen as negative than others, such as murder might be more likely to be seen as negative more of the time than telling a lie. But I think once we add nuance to this, the circumstances factor in significantly to how we view this. So I think there's not really a way to get away from it being something that is just socially agreed upon.
Yeah, and I think it's actually worse than that, because if you look at say religion, like Christian religion, those are just recipes you follow, right? If you follow the recipe, you're supposed to get bread, and if you follow the Christian recipe, you're supposed to get heaven, which we don't know if it exists or not. No one's come back and told anybody about either heaven, hell, or anything that happens in the afterlife, so we don't know. But they give you this recipe, and part of that recipe is absolutes, like thou shalt not tell a lie. Actually, it's thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, which is actually even more specific and doesn't actually ban lying if you think about it. But we'll just leave it at thou shalt not lie for the purpose of this conversation, and thou shalt not commit murder. And so those are very specific things. You can never, ever kill somebody. That means all wars are immoral. That means that you can't kill somebody in self-defense. That means that you can't kill somebody in the defense of somebody else's life. And it makes things like involuntary manslaughter and, accidents also fall into the same rubric, because they're all part of that same recipe. And this is the problem with religions, is they offer recipes and these rules that don't make any sense because they don't take into account nuance. Thou shalt not lie means that the family that was sheltering Anne Frank and her family from the Nazis were sinning. Mm-hmm. And I don't think either one of us would say that family was sinning in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think either one of us would agree that telling somebody they're not planning a birthday party when you're planning a surprise birthday party, I don't think any of us would think that was wrong either, right? Because it's a surprise birthday party, unless, of course, the person doesn't want the surprise birthday party, in which case you should probably let them know. But yeah, as a general rule, that's just that we call that a little white lie. Little white lies are okay. And no, they're not, according to these very black and white things like you're thinking now. And the world is grayer than that. So that's kind of the problem with a lot of that black and white thinking.
I got you. I follow you. I'm going to let you guys get on to the next caller. I appreciate it. I just wanted another side to it than that. Thanks, guys.
Bye. And there's another example I could use where we could get into, show me in the Bible where businesses taking over an entire sector, becoming monopolies, is actually evil.
Yeah.
And doing it legally. Mm-hmm. Doing it legally. Show me where that's evil in the Bible. And yet we have rules against that from happening, and I don't think you can get there from the Bible. Again, black and white thinking. But and there's lots of those types of things in modern stuff. We have that entire ethics of self-driving cars. But anyway, let's go. And we're going to try John in Canada one more time. John in Canada, you have ultimate proof of God. Let's hear it.
Okay. I want you to hear me. I want you to hear me well. The ultimate proof of God is that we're all here and we can all feel him.
But what if I told you I can't feel him?
Well, you do because you're breathing.
What is that feeling? What is that feeling like? Prove to us that we're actually feeling it, because I agree with student Dr. Ben here that I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't feel him at all.
Okay. Do you guys watch Star Wars?
Yeah. Yep. I watched it when it first came out. I'm that old.
Okay. Well, the Force exists. You can feel it, but there's a light side and a dark side.
Is it duct tape? I'm sorry. I made a joke. What were you saying?
You two have chosen to reject God, and your hatred of him is proof that you know he exists. You just want to deny him.
No, that's not the way proof works. That's not the way evidence works, right? Evidence should be something that is consistent with reality and has some sort of predictive power. And so far, you haven't given us anything along those lines. What you are claiming is that you know what's inside our heads, which I find to be arrogant and insulting, because you don't know what's in my head right now. So do you have anything better than that?
I'll give you an example. I used to be an atheist, but then I was depressed. But when I became an atheist, I felt much better now, because I know there's something higher than this world.
So
well, again, I was depressed when I was a theist. So we could play this game all day, just saying that I had this experience, therefore it was God. But what's in the middle? How did we get from point A to point C? I think there's a point B or something in the middle there that we're missing. What is that? What is that piece?
I take it you two are both Christian, so I want to know what turned you off.
Lack of evidence.
Exactly, same.
So if you're given complete evidence of God's existence, would you become Christian at that point?
Oh, I would believe in God. I don't know if I'd become Christian. I think that if it's the God of the Bible, he's kind of an asshole and a narcissistic dickhead. So no, I wouldn't worship him, but I definitely believe in him. If it's a different God, then I'll have a different answer. But it depends on which God you're talking about and which version of the Christian God you're talking about, for that matter. But yeah, if you give me proof, I will accept as true that that your God exists.
So you think the world's better being secular?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you think it's a good idea for men and women to be dressing up like each other and not being able to tell the difference?
Or, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
I don't care if people want to dress the way that they want to dress, and it doesn't impact my life. I don't see why you're bothered by this.
Right, and here's kind of the other problem. And this is, I think you're speaking without really understanding what dress is and what clothing is, right? Because without knowing a particular time or a place, you can't tell me what men and women's clothing was, right? Because at one point in time, men wore what we would describe today as dresses, right? It's really hard without knowing the country, and sometimes even within the country, the town and the time period, what men and women's dress was. So when you say dress like each other, I really don't know what that means, because men's and women's clothing is just clothing, and it doesn't really matter to me. So other than pointing to the claim and not the evidence, which is the Bible, why is it bad for men and women to dress the same?
So you're saying that men should wear dresses?
I don't care.
If they want to.
Why not? Some men would look good in a dress, and I wouldn't. But, I got short, stubby legs, and I look like a pear. So maybe a fruit bowl would be better.
You want me to tell you something?
Well, we're kind of having a conversation here, so I'm kind of hoping you have a response to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's my response. I do not care what an adult does. If a grown man wants to act like a grown woman, I have absolutely no problem with that. What I'm really upset about is that you're trying to indoctrinate children to believe this too.
Except that we're not, though.
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't care if adults wear whatever the hell they want, why do you care what kids wear whatever the hell they want?
Because if you tell a child that he's transgendered and he acts on it and he gets a surgery.
Nobody is
Okay,
telling
all right.
children, hold on, I'm going to let student Dr. Ben go.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trans. I'm also about to be a doctor in about 120 days. And one point, especially that you're getting wrong, is that we're performing genital surgeries on children. We are not doing that. That is not within standards of care. So that is a straw man there. You are arguing against something that is not happening. But also, when we're talking about trans kids, it is not trans adults coming in and telling kids that they're trans. In fact, experiencing the garbage that trans people have to go through, I would rather nobody have to go through what I've had to experience being trans. I would not ever want any child to experience this. But what I can do is for kids who are trans, there's no way for them to not be trans if they already are. So what I can do is I can try to make the world better and not give them the garbage that was done to me. That's all that's happening. The kids are coming to these terms on their own. No one is telling them that they're trans or not. But if they are, we're trying to support them in whatever way that we can. So I think you're arguing against something that is not happening, and then you're also... I get very fired up about this topic.
Go.
But,
Just go. Let it.
but framing this community of people who we've gone through so much, we're just trying to exist. That's it. We just want to exist as ourselves. And whether or not someone wants to call me a woman, it does not change who I am, how I express myself, how I interact with the world. And it's just because you and other people are uncomfortable with me being me. And that's kind of ridiculous. Like, why do you care so much about me existing? I'm curious.
I have nothing against you personally. I don't want you dead. Just don't impose your religion on children.
We're not imposing, we're a lack of religion, not a religion, and we're not imposing it on children. You've got this completely backwards because you don't understand what is actually happening. We're actually allowing children to be who they are. And this isn't something that is new here. We have multiple societies around the world that have recognized that that transgender folks exist from long before today. It's only the religions that come out of the Middle East that are male dominant where we have a problem. But we have Native Americans, we have not just Samoans, but South Pacific Islanders. We have a number of societies where this has been accepted. And so by allowing kids to be themselves and to choose who they want to be, we're increasing their happiness and we're increasing their likelihood of survival. What you're doing is denying they exist, and what you want to do is punish them for being who they are. And that's wrong.
Okay, Jim, would you let a 10-year-old do your taxes for you?
What does that have to do with anything? Taxes are a specialty. I wouldn't let most adults do my taxes.
Well, if you're willing to let children choose their gender, then let them do your taxes. So
those are two. Excuse me for a moment. How in the bloody motherfucking hell did you come up with that stupid ass comparison? Are you really that dumb?
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
No, because that is a stupid comparison. Taxes and wearing clothes have nothing to do with each other. Taxes require you to understand the law, to be able to do math, and to be able to understand what receipts and make some decisions. That's not, oh, hey, I feel like wearing this tubular cloth construction with a head opening, a leg opening, and two arm openings, which is some people would call a dress and some people would call a T-tunic. But those two things have nothing to do with each other. One requires you to take training and become a CPA. The other one doesn't. How are these two things the same?
Because you're asking children to cut off their balls.
I just told you, no one is performing genital surgeries on trans kids that is not within standard of care. What we're doing is developmentally appropriate transition, which for young children oftentimes is social transition. It's wearing what clothes they want to wear. It's maybe cutting their hair, growing their hair out. It might be trying a different name. It might be trying different pronouns. Like, that's what we're talking about when we're saying children transitioning. We're not going to surgery. And it's so easy for people to strawman this and to go to surgery because it's the most extreme thing they can think of. It's the easiest thing to fight back against. But I have a question for you. If genital surgery is such a problem, what do you think about circumcision? Do you think that that's an appropriate practice?
No, it is not.
Okay.
And what religion is it again that actually, three religions maybe, but at least two. What religions are those that practice that?
Christianity and Islam.
Yeah. And guess where your anti-trans comes from primarily, culturally speaking.
Look, why you guys want to give children books about saying trans children are this, or plus, why do you want to destroy the American family? Saying
We're not destroying the American family. We're making it stronger.
Yes, you
are.
are.
We're making it stronger by allowing children to be children, by helping parents to realize that their hopes and dreams are not their children's hopes and dreams, and the best thing they can do is do everything they can to support their children's hopes and dreams by supporting their children. How is that destroying the American family?
Because you need a mother and a father to have a family, not.
Whoa! Jesus Christ! You wander around like a drunk epileptic spider driving a car. We started off with ultimate proof of God. Now we're on to trans issues, right? Then we got on to clothing, and then you got on to genital mutilation, and then you're wandering all over the place every time we back you into a corner. Now, what do you think is going to happen on this topic? We're going to back you into a corner, and you're going to change topics again. So we're not going to do that, right? So let's go back to wearing clothes, right? And supporting children. How is supporting your child's hopes and dreams tearing apart the family? That's the question. You can answer it now.
Because I'm going to answer it. If a child goes to school, hears that he might be trans, he's going to act on it. He's going to tell his parents, I want to transition. They're going to support him. He's going to have the surgery.
No, he's not. What part of student Dr. Benton, who actually is in the medical profession, did you not understand? I'm going to let him go again.
Yeah, so here, let me ask you a question. So would you call yourself a man? Are you a man?
Yes.
Okay. When you were a child, would you have called yourself a boy?
Yes.
If somebody came up to you and said, you're a girl, do you think you would suddenly change your mind and think that you're a girl, or do you think that you had in your brain that you knew you were a boy?
Okay, let me tell you a story. When I was 12...
That's not an answer to the question. You can answer the question or not.
The question. I am answering the question. When I was 12 years old, I really thought I was a girl. Even though I was a boy, I considered being a girl. I really thought about it. But I grew out of it. If I told my parents I wanted to be a girl, and they said, okay, Doug, we're going to transition you, I did the surgery.
That's not what's happening.
That's in a female body.
That's actually, it's an okay example to go off of, because there are kids that go through.
Experience.
No, listen to me. There are kids that go through that. There are some kids that say, hey, I might be trans. And you know what happens? They don't immediately go to surgery. There are so many gates that you have to go through to even get access to puberty blockers and hormones. The process is extensive before you get access to any of that. What happens first is if you say that I might be trans, you get counseling and you get psychotherapy to find out, is this appropriate for you? There's a whole process to say, do you need this or do you not? And some kids, like, they explore it. They say, hey, I want to try out this name. I want to try wearing my hair this way. And some say, yeah, this is for me. I want to go forward and pursue more options. Others say, you know what, this wasn't for me, and they stop. And that's totally supported. Like, when kids are figuring out who they are, they get that room to grow as themselves, but they also, in that, they have the freedom and no pressure to say, you know what, I didn't like that. I'm going to do this instead. And that's also celebrated. So I think opening the discussion to respect each other and include each other is allowing us to find out who we are. And this is a little bit personal, but I didn't get to meet myself until I was in my 20s. And I look back on my life and I think of everything that I missed because I didn't get to meet myself until just now. And I hope that today's kids get options before that to really meet themselves while they're young. They deserve that. And I think robbing them of those experiences is not the way that society is going to progress. So you can have your closed-minded ideas, but I don't think that it's improving anything, and the data shows that.
Yeah, and you do realize that we've also just kind of not talked about an entire group of people, the intersex community, who are born with some form of both genitalia. Why is it so hard for you and people like yourself to go, yes, these types of people exist, and why is it so hard for you then to extrapolate from that it doesn't just have to be genitals that sometimes show up or sometimes on the wrong body, but also that the mind can also do that? Because the complexity of creating male and female is incredibly complex and incredibly fraught with just really bad processes, because they can screw up. Why is it so hard for you to understand that could also happen within the brain and the mind as well? If it can happen with the body, why can't it happen with the brain?
Because you're confusing things. Plus, how do you know if someone's transgender or mentally deficient? Plus,
oh,
wow.
No. There we go. You're dropped, and I hope you never call back again. Yeah, we're not going to go there. Did you want to go ballistic? I'm more than happy.
I mean, I think I already did, but we can all come to terms on this point that being trans is not a mental illness. It is a variation of normal. And when you limit normal to being you exclude everybody else, and not everybody is you, and that's okay. So,
yeah. But yeah, if you're going to say that transgender is a mental illness, we're just going to cut you off right there, because no one needs that shit. All right. We have nothing but atheist callers, so let's see. I'm thinking Paul.
yeah.
All right, we'll take Paul in
you doing?
Canada. Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Here with student Dr. Ben.
You here?
Yeah.
So I was really trying to understand the difference between a few different terms, and maybe you can just make sure that my own thinking on this is accurate, because I think it's accurate myself, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
And the terms were specifically Gnostic, agnostic, and then also theist and atheist. And
Okay.
I just want to make sure that the differences between them are well understood, because I use them quite a bit, and sometimes I've actually questioned myself as to whether I'm using them right.
Okay. Go ahead. Give us your definitions.
Oh, okay. So the difference between atheist and theist is simply the belief that something exists, but you can't actually prove that it does. It's simply what you think might actually be so in relation to God. Would that be accurate?
I think it'd be more accurate to say they're both claims. Theist is a claim that there is one or more gods, and atheist is the claim that there is not one or more gods. Now, we're also talking in very strict philosophical sense. There's also the colloquial sense of the word, which is typically what we use when we say atheist. For instance, I call myself an atheist, but I don't make the claim that there is no God, right? I make the claim that I don't have sufficient proof to accept as true that there is a God, which makes me technically an agnostic atheist.
Okay. So if you said that you were an atheist, would you be technically then saying, I'm not sure if there's a God or not, as opposed to the claim that there is no God?
Speaking purely from the philosophical definitions, if I call myself an atheist, I'm making the claim that there is no God. And that is different than talking to somebody on the street, the colloquial sense of the word.
Okay, because, I always thought it was more that you just couldn't prove it, so you couldn't make a claim one way or the other, as opposed to saying, no, there is none.
That's more of Gnosticism.
That's a little...
Gnosticism is knowledge.
Gnosticism being knowledge and agnostic being we don't know, correct?
And part of the confusion is that we don't always speak purely from a philosophical or the strictest sense of the words that we use, right? We often use colloquialisms. It's easier for me to say I'm an atheist than it is to say I'm agnostic, because it more accurately represents my view. Sometimes people don't think of agnostics in the same way as atheists, and I want to make sure that I'm included in the correct camp in someone's mind. And so that means that I'm not always answering from a purely technical point of view.
Okay, so if I was to go around and say, you know what, I'm not making a claim that there isn't a God because I can't actually show any proof towards it. I just don't believe that there's a God because I don't see any proof to convince me of such. Would that make me technically an atheist then, or would I be somewhere else?
Technically, you're an agnostic atheist. You have no knowledge, and you don't make you're making the opposite claim.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess that clears that up.
Okay, cool.
All right, that's all I had.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Hopefully that's the fun thing about language, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there's the technical sense. I'm sure you probably run into this more as a doctor, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So what kinds of things confuse people that isn't technically true, but
Well, I mean, we can get into semantics on different terms. Like abortion is one that's great because the specific definition of an abortion is the ending of pregnancy earlier than 20 weeks and can be spontaneous or non-spontaneous. But people use it colloquially to mean a non-spontaneous ending of pregnancy at any time. So I end up using the term termination because that's more the correct term, but I understand that in a conversation, when someone says abortion, they mean termination. So, but yeah. You can get into the weeds on a lot of terms like that.
Yeah. So if you guys like what we do and would like to support us, here are some ways to support the Atheist Experience and the Atheist Community of Austin. You'd become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. This will get you access to special chat emojis and all kinds of cool stuff. The Atheist Experience is just one of the shows put on by the ACA. Make sure to check out our other shows as well. We have Secular Sexuality on Thursdays, starting at 7 Central. Truth Wanted airs live Fridays at 7. And then we have our Sunday shows, Talk Heathen at 1 p.m. Central. And, of course, The Nonprofits is on right before this show at 3 p.m. Central. You can also support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/Patreon. Let me rephrase that. tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. And if you shop on Amazon, then you can support the ACA at no cost to you. Simply visit tiny.cc/AmazonSmileACA, all one word, and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity. And Amazon will donate a portion of their profit directly to the ACA. We now have a channel that houses all the shows on the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. There you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, the Nonprofits, and others all on one channel. We have 3 Facebook groups that are run by fans for fans that you can interact with. The first is the Atheist Experience fan group at tiny.cc/FBAXP. There's also the Atheist Experience private fan group where you can interact with others without having those interactions appear on your public feed at tiny.cc/FBAXPPR. We also have a new group, the Atheist Experience fan group, Atheist versus Theist Debates, where you can try out some of your arguments on theists and atheists alike. And you can find that at tiny.cc/AXP fan debates. All right. And also, we have a special group of folks in the audience today. And they are all the way from San Antonio Student Alliance, Secular Student Alliance, excuse me, that are in the audience today. We check out there they are. Wave, say hi, folks. Thank you guys for coming down. We appreciate it. I'm sorry I bobbled your name. I'm doing this on the fly without any notes, so. All right, thanks. And also live in the studio, and that was a studio audience. I should have mentioned that as well. I'm being a terrible host today. All right, let's do some more calls. All right, you want to do 14 here?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right, Seth in Idaho, who says there's a misconception of separation of church and state and the First Amendment. So what's our misconception?
Yeah, okay. Well, given that you're atheists, I'm assuming what you guys think it means is that religion shouldn't be publicly promulgated by the government.
That's correct.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Well, if you can believe that if you want, but that isn't the original intent of the First Amendment. If you look at many of the quotes from the founders and people at the Constitutional Convention, what they were trying to kick against is having one particular religious sect be the national religion, like They didn't want Episcopalianism being the national religion of the United States, or Congregationalism, or whatever. It was not, the issue was not they didn't want religion publicly promulgated, and we can see this from for a couple of different reasons. First of all, if you read some of the state constitutions, they say explicitly that they welcome anybody into America, but you had to explicitly and openly profess belief in the Trinity or the inspiration of the Old and New Testament in order to hold public office. Numerous state constitutions held to that. And then there are a number of quotes from founding fathers that indicate that their understanding, their original intent of the First Amendment was to make sure there wasn't a particular sect of Christianity that dominated, but they did want Christian morals and the Christian religion publicly expressed. For example, a couple of quotes here.
Yeah, and you realize that Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin were probably just not really in favor of, and probably other founding fathers as well, are just not in favor of any religion being there. But if it's just a particular Christian religion, so what about Islam? I mean, what did the founding fathers and the people you're going to quote from say about, Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism?
They actually despised Islam. And when it comes to the beliefs of Benjamin Franklin, for example...
That's not. Could you answer the question? What did they say about Hinduism and Buddhism?
They hated Islam.
I did. You answered the Islam question. You didn't answer the Buddhism and Hinduism question.
I'd have to find quotes on Buddhism. My understanding is that they...
But they wouldn't want those religions either, correct?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not according to what they...
Yeah, so if you don't want a particular sect of Christianity, why would you want any version of Christianity, since they're all just sects of each other? And they very strongly don't agree on fundamental points. Like, for instance, Christian religions don't agree on whether works alone or faith alone, and some Christian religions believe it's a combination of both to some degree. So why would you want any religion to be in power, be supported by the state?
Well, if you want to believe that's inconsistent, I don't think your analysis is correct. If you want to believe that's inconsistent, that's fine. I'm simply telling you what they believe, what they say.
Right, but this is a specific question that I have. You have Christian sects who believe that works alone will get you into heaven, and you have Christian sects that faith alone will get you into heaven, and then you have some Christian sects in the middle of that. And since you have such sects infighting, which sect do you pick to be generic?
They didn't want a sect, but they wanted general Christian religion.
What does general Christianity mean, given that Christian sects have fundamental differences between them?
They still agree on the fundamentals. So, for example, Episcopalians and Congregationalists agree on the doctrine of the Trinity. Even Catholics and Eastern Orthodox agree on that.
So, again, you're not answering the question. What is the version of generic Christianity that you think should be supported by the government?
Generally speaking, it was Protestantism. They weren't as much a fan of Catholicism either.
Oh, so Protestantism and Catholicism are two different sects, aren't they? And so you're saying that they want Protestantism, which would be promoting a sect of religion.
No, the way they used the terms religious sect.
I'm talking about today. If we pick Protestantism as the most generic Christianity, we're ignoring Catholicism and Mormonism, aren't we?
Well, Mormonism is not in any sense a Christian religion.
You can say that's not my...
Yeah, so what criteria makes a religion a Christian religion? Like, give me specific tenets that you have to hold to be Christian.
Generally speaking, it's adherence to the early creeds, like the Nicene Creed and the definition of Chalcedon. Those are...
How are those creeds established? Like, what happened to make those the tenets that mattered?
The church got together,
The church. Who is the church at this point?
Sorry, say that again?
Which church at this point are you talking about?
It was the entire church. Like they did with the Council of Nicaea, they delegated people.
And the Council of Nicaea was primarily made up of what type of Christians?
They didn't have a distinction between Eastern Orthodox and Catholic and Protestant back then, so it was just Christians.
Right. And so again, and why did they have to create the Council of Nicaea? Why did they have to do this?
The reason that came up was because there was a bishop named Arius who was teaching contrary to. It
wasn't just one bishop. It wasn't just one, right?
And Arius and his followers, obviously. Arius was teaching that Jesus was.
Again, could you answer the question? It wasn't just one, right?
Arius and his followers, yeah.
Yeah, there were multiple things that some people thought were heresies, and the Council of Nicaea was called to bring it all up. So again, see, here's my problem with what you're saying. You cannot pick a generic version of Christianity because it simply doesn't exist. So what you want isn't possible. And so the best we can come up with is to remove all religion from government as much as we possibly can. Now, that doesn't mean banning Christians. That just means that we need to make sure that our laws aren't based on the Bible or anybody's interpretation of the Bible, because you cannot objectively interpret a work of literature. And that's all the Bible really is a work of literature. So how do you pick a generic version of Christianity that you want without picking one particular sect?
Okay, I'd like to answer that question, but you keep interjecting. So can I give my answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at the state constitutions, it was things like belief in the infallibility of the Old and New Testament and belief in the Trinity.
But not everybody believes in the infallibility of those two things. Not every Christian religion doesn't. The Catholic Church, for instance, doesn't hold those two things to be completely infallible.
No. You're just no. By definition, a Christian religion is one that is Trinitarian.
That's not the definition that first and second century Christians would use. They would consider that heresy.
No, they didn't.
As far as I know, a bunch of them did. So again, see, we keep coming against the same problem. I can point to Christian sects who didn't believe what you currently believe and currently are saying. And they still called themselves Christian, because I don't know what a true Christian is, and neither do you, without falling into the no true Scotsman fallacy. So the only thing we can say is that a Christian is someone who believes in Christ, and okay, fine. But does that mean that somebody who believes that Christ existed and isn't divine is a Christian? No, of course not. You can't get around picking a sect and picking a set of beliefs to be supported by the government, because everything about Christianity is up for interpretation.
Okay, can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when it comes to the whole, up for interpretation thing, first of all, I've read the Quran. There's absolutely no way to honestly interpret the Quran and come away with the belief that Jesus was God. The Quran claims he wasn't. Whether that's true or not, whether you accept the Quran or not, it explicitly denies his divinity.
Okay.
You can't get around it.
I've read the Bible and came to the same conclusion about it.
Okay, well, that's because you're simply ignoring what the text says. But the point, I'm
not ignoring what the text says. When I see a text claiming that 1 million Semites were in Egypt, and we find absolutely no archaeological evidence for 1 million Semitic people living in Egypt at any point in time, much slave-free doesn't matter, then I kind of go, well, that's not true. And that means that the entire story is probably is fabricated. When we look at a story called the Flood, and we look at that and we go, there's absolutely no evidence for a worldwide flood on the scale that is claimed in the Bible. We go, that's not true. There's a lot of things I can go through and go, well, no, that's not true. If we eliminate all of the supernatural elements of the Jesus story, we're left with a charlatan who is duping people with common stage magician tricks. So
okay, you're conflating two different things. You're conflating whether something is true and whether you believe it. The Bible claims, whether you like it or not, that Jesus is God. Virtually every.
I agree. The Bible claims that. You can't prove it. But I'm not talking about proof. What I'm saying is that I came to the same conclusion about the Bible you did about the Quran, and then you said I wasn't reading it correctly, and I was pointing out that I was in fact reading it correctly. And so my conclusion about the Bible is just as justified as your conclusion about the Quran. And now where do we stand about the government picking a religion in which it supports?
Okay, well, I'd love to get to the answer, but I keep getting interrupted. So, again, the Bible claims that the global flood happened. It claims that the universe was created in 6 days. Now, going back to the original intent, if you don't like what the original intent was, that's on you. I'm simply telling you, what did the founding fathers believe? What did they believe was, generic Christianity, as it were? They believed that it was Trinitarianism and belief in.
Well, okay, so here's a problem that I have with this whole conversation is that, like, even your interpretation of what the founding fathers believed is an interpretation. Like, you are assuming things that went on in their thought process back then, and then you're saying, well, yeah, because I think that they thought this way, then my interpretation of this is right. We're getting to the same problem with this as we did with the Bible and the different sects of Christianity. So, like, what if
telling me it's my interpretation doesn't prove I'm wrong? Okay, I'll give you an example. So I read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Okay, he started out as I believe it was Presbyterian and Trinitarian. Through his youth, he began examining some of the arguments for God's existence. He fiddled around with them, looked at them, didn't find them convincing, but also came to the conclusion that the Bible wasn't. He became a deist. Okay, he said he didn't find any atheistic arguments convincing, but he became a deist. He was also anything but hostile to the Christian religion, because he actually called for prayer during the Constitutional Convention, and he signed the Treaty of Paris. And at the end of the Treaty of Paris, it says, "In the name of the undivided Trinity." So I'm willing to.
Yeah, and we've also signed the Treaty of Tripoli, right, which says that the United States is in no way a Christian nation. So you've got, but you're still not answering the question of today. I don't care about the founding fathers. Today, how do we pick a generic Christian religion given that all of them disagree on some point? And more importantly, how do we do it considering that we have a larger population of Islam, we have a larger population of Hindu, we have a larger population of Buddhists, we have the Native American religions? How do we pick one religion for the state to support?
Okay, there are a couple of things there. First of all, I called in about the original intent. I'm not talking about whether you like it or not. I'm talking about what the founders believed.
So if you're making the points about the original intent, with what purpose do we need to go back to that original intent? Where are you going with this assertion?
Because the Constitution says it's the supreme law.
Okay, but why? So here's what I'm gathering, and here's why it matters what goes on right now. Because your argument is going from this was the original intent, therefore this is what we should be going to. This is what we should be using. Is that not the argument you're trying to get to?
The Constitution or not?
So you are wanting to make this about today.
You're an originalist in constitutionalism, which my understanding is actually a minority opinion on constitutional law, is what you're saying.
That's actually not the opinion of the founders. They actually explicitly said in their own writings that if you want to understand a document, you have to go back to its original intent and go back to the meanings of the terms that were used.
But that's not an answer to the question.
All the founding fathers were originalists.
And again, originalism is a minority opinion among legal scholars, constitutional law legal scholars, correct?
I don't care what legal scholars say today. I care what the writers of the...
Okay, so you are an originalist in that sense. And here's the thing. I don't really care. What I care about is today and what is going to work for us today. So again, I have to ask you this question. How do we today pick a Christian religion to support, given all of the religions that we have, Christian and non, in this country today? Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
I mean, are you asking me like what I personally think the solution should be?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that we should go back to the Bible, which.
Okay. So we should. So are you willing to be a slave?
No,
Do you think people should own slaves?
No.
Do you think people should be able to beat their slaves as long as a slave doesn't die within 3 days?
If that's what the Bible says.
That is what the Bible says, so you support slavery. You're an evil son of a bitch. No. Bye.
Okay. Here's the...
Yeah, we're going to stop on that one.
That was all over the place.
That was all over the place, and he never did answer the question, how do we determine which Christian religion? And answer is, of course, we can't, therefore we shouldn't pick one. But anyway, so where do you want to go, Ben?
I really want to take line 3. I want to see what this is about.
Okay, we'll take line 3. Olivia in Illinois, welcome to the show. You want to know why we deal with scientific questions that we're not equipped to answer, and why not just stick with the Bible? Is that correct?
Thank you so much. You know, I'm 90 years old, and half of that has been spent waiting to get on one of these programs. I am just so happy. Listen, I just have... Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Oh, okay, because I turned the volume. Should I turn? I put my TV on hold. I can see you guys, but I can't hear.
That's the best way to do it.
Right, I'm so afraid of losing a call. Listen, first of all, yes, my little beef is that I was lucky enough not to grow up under any thing about what I should believe. And when I hear you guys wrestle, and not only you guys, Dan or Ben, whenever I hear you guys wrestling with something that has nothing basically to do with God or the Bible, my suggestion is so much time is lost on the what it should be. The program, I think, should only be about what people believe and who they believe in, and has nothing to do with a society as a whole. So far as I'm so excited. Please forgive me for stumbling on that. I think that the first thing when a person calls in, the first thing that I feel that we should find out is what God they believe in, and make them name the God. It's not enough for them to say, I believe in God, without saying the name of that God. And my goodness, you can start with page 1 of the Bible and almost destroy them right then and there. I think the main thing to do is to let people know how stupid it is to believe in a book when the first page is wrong. The first lie that was told by Yahweh. The first mass murder was done by Yahweh.
Yeah.
And when these people try to tell you about abortion as if it means something to God or to Yahweh, ask them, who killed more babies than anybody in history? Yahweh loved to kill babies.
Huh?
When he tells them to go on and kill every man, woman, and child, and then he says, and the little ones too. You know, I mean, but guys, if I also, I'm talking so fast. I also notice that when there are two of you and one person calls in, you guys talk to each other more so than finding out what the caller, how they feel about certain things. I do not think that you give the caller in enough time to talk if they're talking about the God they believe in and the Bible. And I think that the heathen programs and the programs that are dealing with people who have a problem believing the unbelievable, you know, that somebody told them that there is some magic guy that lives in the sky that watches what they do and judges them. First of all, if the God is what they say Yahweh is, then he already knows who's going to go to hell and who's going to go to heaven.
Well,
that doesn't mean anything. Right.
I can answer your question, and the reason is because beliefs inform actions.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Beliefs inform actions, and actions have consequences. And many Christians who are Bible-believing Christians who believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible have all kinds of crazy beliefs based on that. So they believe in young earth creation. They believe the flood happened. They believe all this stuff that didn't happen. And so we kind of let the conversation go where it will and continue to ask questions and point out where their thinking is incorrect. And so science does come into question because, you know, we had the caller earlier today who wanted to wander around transgender issues. and those were all based on Christian religion. So if we have the same conversation with everybody every single time, that gets a little bit boring. And so we do mix it up, and we do take calls for people who have specific topics they want to talk about.
But who's this Dan that I'm speaking with at the moment?
This is Jim.
Is this Dan?
No, this is Jim.
I'm Ben.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, what
Hi.
I'm saying is that anything, I'm not talking about you guys personally, but many of the people that call in and ask about the Big Bang and the so and so, that should be given to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't feel that you guys that I've heard so far are equipped to answer cosmology.
Yeah. I mean, so when I saw this question come in, it was interesting for me because we all hosts on these shows have different experiences and different knowledge bases, and I do study science. I have a bachelor's in biology. I'm about to graduate from medical school, so there are scientific topics that I'm very happy to answer, and somebody else might not be, but. Like Jim was saying, we take the calls that come in, and our main thing here is to address the thought process, not as much about are they right or are they wrong, but how did you get there? And you can address how you got there without necessarily being an expert in the field. Granted, it's nice to have an expert, but it doesn't take an expert to say, how did you get to this conclusion? And so that's where we're coming from. And if someone has whatever belief, yeah, we're going to take a variety of calls because that's if some issue is what's holding somebody to a belief and we can address their thought process, that change in thought process might impact other areas of their life. So, yeah, it doesn't always seem relevant, but the thought process of how they got there is relevant, and that's really what we care about the most.
Right. And while I am no Neil deGrasse Tyson on cosmology,
Wait a minute.
I do study it more than most people do. Go ahead.
Was that Ben that I?
Yes, that's Ben.
Yep.
Was that?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, baby. You're the cutest thing I've seen in a long time. But anyway, Ben, it's a talk about religion. You may know a whole lot, and I'm sure you do, about other subjects. But maybe somebody should start a program on only cosmology or only transgenders or only certain things. I'm led to believe that these programs, the heathen and the freedom from religion, has only to do with religion. Because as you well know, so many people call in that haven't, they're so wrong about the religion. And that's why I feel that you should have them read their own book and be knowledgeable enough to tell them about what that book says. They're believing some little first-century Jewish guy who spent 36 months among the people that did about 7 questionable supposed miracles that each one can be debunked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He never did any put any legs back on the amputees. He never even cured a child.
Yeah.
The closest to a child that Yahshua ever went to was a 12-year-old. And, of course, in those days, 12-year-olds were getting married and happy. It's just so much that you can use about the Bible itself to show these people how wrong their belief about the Bible is, and make them see that they should be glad that there is really no such people as Yahweh, the cruelest person. And I'm quite sure that you all have read Yahweh.
We've read the Bible, both of us, and most of the hosts have as well.
God.
Yeah. But, the good news is, Olivia, that there are a lot of channels on YouTube that do deal with science. There's even a channel on YouTube that deals with transgender issues. We just tend to take a more shotgun approach, taking anything that anybody believes and talking about it, and that's kind of what we do. But we'll try and stick more to Bible where we can. Hopefully the callers will allow us to do that. Thank you so much for calling, Olivia. Appreciated talking to you. Okay.
Yeah.
Did that go the way?
That was not what I was expecting.
Yeah. And now I think we've got a question here in the audience.
So hopefully this question makes sense. But sitting here today and through talking and this, I was thinking we talk a lot about free will a lot, and we talk about a lot about abortion rights and who's for them and whatnot. But it seems like there's a hierarchy between people that believe in free will and to not have abortion. But why do we support something that, let's say, someone who's able to have a child and become pregnant does, and when they were, let's say, even unwillingly had sex, why do we want to support something that was done outside of somebody's free will, instead of just saying, well, that we want to give the potential fetus free will to be alive, but we don't have, this is a child out of free will.
Are you asking why do some pro-life people support are pro-life even in the face of rape and sexual assault?
I suppose so, but it just seems like they have they believe this over this in these circumstances, but not because of this. It's just straight because they just don't want to see it.
Yeah, you'd have to ask someone who is pro-life. What I have heard, and I may be misinterpreting what they're saying in some way, is that because life is just that sacred, it doesn't matter. God will find a way.
Okay, that makes sense.
But again, I'm Ben. What about you?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird conversation to have, and a lot of it comes down to them misunderstanding the whole conversation, and I can't really speak on their behalf. Again, I feel like I would straw man it if I tried, so I don't really want to.
Yeah, I think I walked as close to straw manning their position as I'm willing to with that, and just say that that's things that have been said to me. I don't know how many of the pro-life folks do that. It'd be a pro-life question.
I agree.
Okay. And okay, let's do the next call. 22 or 15 are the only theists that I see.
Either one's fine. You can pick.
Okay. Mid-roll. Before we take that call, the ACA hosts several other shows other than the Atheist Experience, including Nonprofits, Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, and Talk Heathen. If you haven't caught all the shows last week, here's a taste of the things you'll probably want to go back and watch.
For lack of a better word, human history is deeply penetrated with kink and with weirdness and with sex just purely for pleasure. And we can't get away from that. And we can't pretend like there's a normal way to do things, because there just isn't.
So I don't think that fear is faith. And so I think it's good to not be afraid. I don't want to be controlled with fear. Do you?
No, I do not.
Okay.
So, you ready to be an atheist?
We come together against the monarchy.
We come together against the monarchy. What a fitting place to end.
Haven't we? We've been very British with each other. so to everyone else out there, this is how Brits really behave.
Yeah. It's the only show, and I will never ever get tired of saying this, that is worth watching at 3 p.m. Central on a Sunday afternoon. Get yourself over and watch the Nonprofits, the first ever all-British episode. You will not be disappointed.
God's like, oh, well, how do I get glory? Oh, I make people suffer. But under your view, you've already admitted there's a logically possible world where God doesn't have to do that. And under your view, his glory wouldn't be achieved? His glory wouldn't be achieved if there's not victims in it? That's your view?
Right, and if you folks can arrange to be in the Austin area between December 16th and 18th, consider, it is the 18th, so we're already in the studio. But if you can, last Sunday of the month, normally we are right here in the studio, and if you can make it into Austin, come and visit. Doors open at 6 p.m. on Thursday and Friday, noon on Sunday. Parking is wherever you can find a legal spot after the lot is full. Also, if you come for Talk Heathen and don't want to stay for AXP for whatever reason, we'll be very disappointed, but don't park in the parking lot because you will get blocked in. It is a very small parking lot and does not have good spaces. So if you do come early, make sure you want to stay if you want to park in the parking lot. And if you can't make it here this month, we'll continue to broadcast live from the library the last week of each month. So keep watching, and you could be part of the wonderful folks in the crowd. Can we get a crowd shot and go wild? Go wild, yay! These fine folks made it all the way in. And we're also looking for additional talented hosts and crew members for the shows. If you're interested in assisting with audio, video, hosting our shows, and can be live in the studio, email us at tv@atheist-community.org, and the production team will get in touch with you. We always need volunteers. That's the fun part of being a nonprofit. Okay. Which one do you think, Ben? 23 or 22?
Whichever one you want.
We'll take Brittany in Georgia, who's questioning your faith. So.
Yes. Hello. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, my name is Brittany. I live in Savannah, Georgia. I'm currently a senior who is about to graduate from college. And right now I'm having a real crisis of faith, especially with learning all the evidence that's against the existence of a God, especially with the theory of evolution and also the Big Bang Theory and the universe existing longer than the Bible has claimed it has. I really am afraid to question my faith because I'm worried that if I'm actually wrong and there is a God, then there will be severe consequences for me.
Well, do you think there are consequences if you don't believe in the great gods and you'll go to Hades?
I believe. I really didn't believe in any other gods.
Right. If you don't believe in if you don't believe in those gods and you don't believe in their versions of hell or punishment or reward, then why is it so hard for you to do the same thing when it comes to the concept of a Christian hell?
Because I was raised Christian, and also I have a lot of problems with Christianity. I try to tell my family about how harmful it is, especially what the Bible justifies when it comes to slavery, women's place in society, and also it's been used to justify many other horrendous acts. And my family just won't listen to it.
Right. And talking to family is really, really hard, especially about faith. And if you come from a strong faith family, it can be very, very difficult. But apply the same criteria to hell as you would to Hades, or the Vikings also had a hell, H-E-L, slightly different. But there are a lot of gods and punishments. You don't believe in them and you don't accept hell, then why should you accept hell as being punishment? And if your God, if that God does exist and he's fair, then he's got to realize that he hasn't offered the evidence you need to accept him as true. And so there's not a problem there, but that's assuming he even exists.
Exactly. Also, I grew up in a strong Baptist home, and I was raised that the end of the world was imminent. And one thing I'm telling myself, and one thing I'm figuring out, is that many theologians and scholars and mathematicians have predicted the end of the world since well over 2,000 years ago, and it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, there's evidence that the initial apostles and the initial believers believed that would happen in their lifetime, and we are many lifetimes past that. And so you keep having to make excuses or move the goalposts as to what the end of the world and when it's going to be in order to fit the reality of the fact that it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Is this fear the only thing keeping you in religion still?
Right. Fear of being left behind during the rapture.
That's it. That's the only thing keeping you in. Are there any other points that you can think of that that still convince you that the Christian God is real?
No, actually.
It sounds like to me like I understand the fear of hell, and this is something that I still struggle with occasionally. But it sounds like you've already gotten there. You've already gotten to a place, I think, where you don't believe, and it's just now dealing with what your brain believes the consequences to be. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of easy answers for that because even after a few years of being an atheist, I still struggle with the fear of hell, and I still struggle with loss of community and some other things that tied me to the religion, even though I didn't really believe in it. So it's hard. It's hard to address that stuff, and unfortunately, a lot of times you have to kind of move forward and work with it as it comes. But to me, it sounds like you've already gotten there.
Well, it's nice to know that I'm not alone, and this is the reason why I was so afraid to actually call myself an atheist. And I feel like my family, especially my mom, is going to be very upset that I don't believe or think the way they do. And she even told me that when I first began to question my faith when I was 17, that she wanted to take me to a priest to convince me that God was real.
My parents did the same kind of thing. Well, didn't want to take me to a priest, but how I left religion, it was along the same lines as you. I was in the same stage of my life. I was wrapping up my undergrad in biology, and I had a lot of questions. When I was a Christian, I was very into apologetics, like many people are. And it got to a point where I kept hearing the same answers from them over and over again that would never be enough to convince me. And I remember they had tried to get me to talk to all different types of people, pastors and apologists about this, and the same answers just kept coming up. And I know that it greatly disappoints my family that I'm not religious anymore, and they wish that I would just read more of the Bible, and I did, and it didn't help. So I don't like to say that I know where you're coming from, but I feel like we have similar backgrounds on this, and it's not easy to go through that. And I understand the disappointment that your family might have, but kind of at the end of the day, I can't lie to myself, and I can't lie to other people about what I believe, and I didn't necessarily choose to be convinced or not, but that's the way that it is. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with this with your family, and I wish that you were in a better situation.
And I'm not out to my family. I'm not exactly hiding. That is my real name on the screen either. So if my parents were ever to stop being Luddites and actually Google me, they would find out pretty quickly. But I'm not out to them, and I don't consider that lying to them. There was, a couple months ago, my uncle died, and I went to his funeral. It was held in a Catholic church, and it was a Catholic funeral, and I had absolutely no problems doing that because I wasn't there to support religion. I was there to support my family in a time of need, and also to say goodbye to my uncle. So at no point did I feel like I was lying. Now, different people have different thoughts on this, so this is just my experience. And we don't talk about religion because I don't want to go there, and I'm not going to lie to my parents. If they ask, I'll tell them. But I don't want them to ask either because I know what's going to happen next. And I don't want that to happen. So there are, a number of ways to approach this. And I think finding out what is best for you is probably going to take some effort. And there's an organization called Recovering from Religion that is an absolutely wonderful organization. They have trained counselors. I don't want to call them counselors. They had trained folks on the line to talk to you and to help you out much better than we can in just a short phone call. So I'd really recommend that you call Recovering from Religion. And can someone, don't know if we've got, probably run something under the screen here in just a second with their contact information. But yeah, they are a great organization to help people exactly in your position work through all of these issues. So I'd really recommend calling them.
Well, thank you both for the good advice. And there's actually one supportive member of my family that I do have, and that's my younger brother. We both talk about how we're starting to question our faith. And also, if I'm correct, and I'm learning about this in my philosophy class, basically what's keeping me, quote unquote, in my faith, and the reason why I have this fear is Pascal's wager, if that's the correct name for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the counters to Pascal's wager is, what if the real God wrote the Bible so that he could send people to hell who believe in it?
Interesting point.
Yeah, and we can't prove that God exists or doesn't exist either, so it's the same problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and if Pascal's wager is a valid reason to believe in something, shouldn't you also believe in the Greek gods and the Hindu gods and the Roman gods and the 1,600 some odd gods that some people claim humanity has come up with over the years?
Exactly. It's not a 50-50 toss-up.
Right. It really isn't. So.
Well, I think I'm going to go now, but
okay.
Thank you both for the good advice, and I wish you both the best.
Same to you, Brittany. Good luck. And don't forget to call RFR. They're great people. All right. Okay. We got time for one more call. Do you want to take 22 there?
Yeah, I want that one. Yeah.
All right. All right. This is Hank in Texas who says, slavery makes humans special. Go ahead, Hank.
Hi, Jim.
You're on with Jim and student Dr. Ben.
Yeah, I just want to say I enjoy your show. I listen to it fairly often and see the clips on YouTube. But this is a question that I just wanted to discuss, and I know it sounds a little strange when I say it, but my point is that I think most people, their morals are repulsed by slavery, but they don't have any problem with the slavery of other species. And from what I understand, studying some evolution is, we're supposed to all be just equals, so to speak. And it seems like what makes humans special is that we do have problems in morality with slavery against our own species, but not against other species. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, if any.
Well, I'm confused about your statement that evolution would mean that all species are equal, because that's not true. But it's an odd thing to kind of reach for humans being special and then saying, yeah, well, slavery makes... I'm a little confused about why there's this need to make humans special. Why do you care about this?
Well, I guess I would say when I say I'm a theist, that means I believe in there's a God, but I'm not a Christian or anything. I'm closer to a deist, I guess, something like that.
So do humans need to be special compared to other species for you to still have your belief in this deity?
I think that is evidence for a deity. I'm not saying it's proof or anything.
How is this evidence for a deity? Is it possible that a deity could make all of these species equal and still be a deity?
It could, sure. If he's a deity, he could do anything he wanted to.
Okay, so then we established that humans being special isn't an important factor.
I'm sorry, what?
So with that being said, if you can have both situations, then that would mean that the fact that whether or not humans are special is irrelevant. It's not necessary to be true for God to exist. So I'm not sure why this point is super important.
Well, my point was, why is it that we have problems with human slavery, but not problems with any other species out there? That's
because we're speciesist, basically, is what it comes down to. And when you say slave, I mean, slave's got a particular connotation. I don't think most people think of cows as slaves. They think of cows as food, just like any other predator thinks of their prey as food. But I mean, the case has been made by vegans and others who claim that meat is murder, and that we do in fact enslave cows and chickens and most of our protein sources. And you could make that argument, but I think what you're asking kind of maybe is, where do we get morals from if not from a God? Is that closer to what you're trying to ask?
Well, I guess that's part of it. But it was more like humans seem to be a special case of our morals don't allow humans to be slaves, but they do allow every other species in the world to be slaves.
Well, so that's not entirely true, though, because throughout history, people thought it was completely moral to own people as slaves.
And the Bible makes it moral as well to own slaves.
I'm not talking about the Bible. I'm talking about humans are evolving, it seems like, which is one of my beliefs, whether it's true or not. Humans are evolving to be better and better all the time as we move closer to what God wants us to be.
Well, so humans are a social species, and cooperation is a survival trait. And the best way to cooperate is to be fair, and to treat people equally. Self-sacrifice comes into that. I mentioned the meerkat populations before, where you'll have a meerkat give warning that a predator is in the area, risking that meerkat's life. We call that self-sacrifice, and we consider that to be a good thing, and that comes from us being a social species. At one time, slavery was thought to promote the species, and also there's a large part of tribalism, which is something else that we see across species, where chimpanzee tribes or troops will war against each other for resources. There's an interesting case where dolphins, it was dolphins, in the Caribbean, two very different groups, two different tribes basically came together and didn't make war because there was no need to fight over the resources that were there. And scientists were very, very perplexed by that because they thought there certainly would be some fighting there, but there wasn't. But in other cases, we see that tribalism is a thing, and we humans are no different. We're just as tribal. And, as our expansion and awareness of other human beings has expanded our notion of a tribe. At one time, it was literally just a tribe of people who moved around together or maybe lived in a single spot. Then it became a town. Multiple towns got together and became a region, which we now call countries. And, some countries didn't come together until the late 1800s, early 1900s, like Germany and Italy, for instance, didn't become nations as we know them until then. But all this tribalism is basically, the eradication of that is basically us becoming aware that people are people, and we're expanding our notion of what the tribe is to include folks in India, to include the Chinese and people we don't really have a lot of contact with because we have more contact with them today. So that's kind of where we get our morals from and why we're becoming more and more less tribal, and also economics being better and us being richer as a globe, as humanity, being more able to meet our basic needs than we have been in any other time and place. So those all seem to be much more realistic in terms of what you call becoming more like what God wants us to be. Just seems to be more us learning how to survive better as a species.
Would you say that's an improvement in our morals, or
yeah,
or
I'd say so. But again, like these are things that we've agreed upon that we didn't always agree upon, and I would argue, and I'm sure Jim would also argue this, that it's not because we're becoming more aligned with what God wants. It's because we as a society have agreed on certain terms, and even going beyond what benefits us as a species, there are selfish reasons to agree with the rest of society and to go along with what your community wants. You can think of like social consequences are huge. If you do something against the status quo, like take something small, like we talk about the consequences we have with our own families with coming out as atheists or something, and people are very, very scared to go against even that agreed upon stance of their family. And it's not like I'm going to die because I came out to somebody. And it's an uncomfortable situation, but that's still like, it's an act of self-preservation. And we do benefit from getting along with other people. And sometimes acts that are seen as not benefiting us might still have benefit. So even that meerkat that was giving the signal, they might be exposed to more harm. But there might be, and I don't know meerkat social structures, but there might be some reward if it were to go well for them. Like, for example, a lot of people, and I'm in the military, and I'm not saying that everyone in the military does this, but a lot of people join the military because they know that there's a certain level of honor and prestige with being a hero. And that's a reason a lot of people might engage in an activity that is more harmful to them. And so there are selfish ways to engage with society and still benefit the group as a whole. So I think those are some things that are often left out of this conversation. But I don't think this goes back to a God. I think this is more of a sociological concept.
Well, I would agree with a lot of what you said. I was just would come back to my point of why do you think it's all right to have morals against humans being slaves, but it's no problem with other species being slaves? It seems like we have a definite dividing line there of humans being different from other species, maybe even superior to them or something.
Yeah, and I agree. We are speciesist, and many of us are. Whether or not that is correct or not is a debate for another time. I hope we kind of answered most of your questions, Hank. I do have a hard stop. I have a plane to catch here in about an hour and a half, so I do need to get rolling. But did we answer most of your questions? I mean, being speciesist is not really a good answer, but it's the best one that I've got. So
it's an interesting conversation. I enjoy your show. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Call again. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. So there are some folks who are the truest unsung heroes on this show, and that is our crew. Those folks right there, they make all this possible. Getting a video onto YouTube is not easy to do by yourself, and I think Ben, you've got some experience with that.
Oh yeah, it's not easy. Not easy at all.
We just get to sit down and be talking heads and answer questions on the phone, and those guys back there are doing some real effort. And the other folks that make this show so much more fun, and the reason why I actually flew in today was the folks out there in that audience who are absolutely amazing. Give yourselves a round of applause. I love having you guys here more than I can tell you. It is incredibly awesome. Thank you so much for showing up, and we hope to see you again next month, last Sunday of the month. And so visit our website, atheistcommunity.org, for the latest on what's been happening, and feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. Folks, it's been great being Ben. Thanks for coming down, and I know you flew in too. You're spending more time in Austin than I am, so thanks for coming down and volunteering your time and effort. I know you're busy getting ready to be a doctor in about 4 months.
Yeah, Yeah.
Is it fair to say a real doctor, or is that being insulting? I hope
Yeah, I'll
not.
be a real doctor.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, folks. And that is all we have for you today.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's setting up your business, what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.